It's not just here in the UK that everyone wants to give their 2 cents on Brexit chaos. We've been speaking to Democratic Senator Chris Murphy about Donald Trump Jr. and the U.S. National Security Advisor of the Trump administration, John Bolton, who have berated the British government and very specifically Theresa May as well. But what's the point of high-profile Americans weighing in on this Brexit battle, and what does it mean for that historically special relationship? I'm joined now by former British ambassador to the U.S., Peter Westmacott, and Nile Gardiner, former advisor to Margaret Thatcher, who joins us from Washington. Peter, let me start with you. Did you have an opportunity to read this Donald Trump Jr. op-ed where he says, essentially, yes, democracy in the UK is dead. Theresa May should have followed my father's advice.
I read it this morning, yes, Heather.
What did you make of it?
I wondered who'd written it for him.
You don't think he's capable of writing that op-ed on his own?
I'm sure he is, but it looked to me like it was written probably by a Brit and with somebody who was tapping into the kind of we are all victims of the terrible establishment and the elite. I wasn't sure whether it was his initiative, wasn't sure whether he drafted it, but, you know, that sort of thing is always written by somebody else in any case and then tweaked. But more importantly, you know, what is the purpose of it? Because I think the external intervention of that kind into domestic political debate isn't always tremendously helpful. And frankly, although it created a little bit of headline this morning, it rather sank without trace because so much else has been going on the Brexit front today.
And we're going to get to that. Before we do, though, Nile Gardiner, your reaction, not just to what Donald Trump Jr. wrote, but what John Bolton, the National Security Advisor, said. Here's what he told Sky News.
The president's been clear he wants a resolution of this issue that allows the United States and Britain to come to trade deals again. He sees huge opportunity if Britain's status can be resolved. And I think the point he's made that I would stress is people of Britain have voted. When is the political class going to give effect to that vote?
What do you make, Nile Gardiner, of John Bolton weighing in?
Well, I think it's a very important message that Ambassador Bolton is sending there. I think the White House has been 100% supportive of Brexit. They're looking forward to a US-UK free trade agreement, and I think it's in US interest, actually, for Britain to exit the EU as soon as possible, and of course
Chris
fulfill
Murphy,
the will
the
of the
Democratic
British people.
senator I just interviewed, said the exact opposite of what you're stating here.
Yeah, I heard.
He said Donald Trump alone cannot decide what trade agreement happens, and that Congress is most likely to prioritize a trade agreement with the EU over the UK in the shorter term.
Yeah, I did hear the senator's comments, actually. He's the first US senator who I've heard who is casting doubt on a US-UK free trade agreement. The reality is that there's already a US Senate UK Trade Caucus, which has at least 19 senators as members, and they're drawn from both the Republican and Democratic parties, so it's a bipartisan issue. There is tremendous backing, I think, for a US-UK free trade agreement on Capitol Hill. And certainly the U.S. administration has given its 100% backing to moving forward with such a trade deal in terms of the negotiations for it. So I would say the mood here in Washington is very much in favor of a very big, successful trade deal with the United Kingdom. And I think also that there has been very, very strong U.S. backing for Brexit as well. After all, Brexit is about sovereignty and self-determination, liberty and freedom, all the principles that the American people hold dear to their hearts.
Well, certainly, Nile Gardiner, the Trump administration and those who support it are in favor of Brexit. Peter Westmacott, let's get to today's developments, because Theresa May's in a bind here. The EU is telling her, we'll give you a short extension, but only if you're able to get that deal that was so resoundingly defeated twice before through Parliament next week. Do you think she has a chance?
That is right. Well, it's become more difficult for her because the Speaker of the House of Commons has ruled that you can't bring your deal back to me if it's the same. It's got to be substantively different. She was intending to try and get a third vote on it yesterday, but actually the votes weren't there, and in any case the Speaker made that very difficult. So now she's gone to Brussels, and there is that conditionality. You can have a short extension, not the extension, by the way, that she's asked for, which is to the end of June. They've said you can have till, or they're going to say, she can have till the 23rd of May because of the timetable of European Parliament elections. But it does depend on getting her deal through.
Will she get it? Will she get it done?
It doesn't feel like it at the moment, because on all sides there are a lot of people, whether they're Brexiteers or they are Remainers, who don't think that that deal is very good. And of course the deal doesn't actually deal with any any of the substance. All that would have to be negotiated after we had left during the transition period, and a lot of people are nervous about what that means. So I think we are still in crisis, and it is by no means impossible that we don't get an agreement in the Parliament about the terms or the deadline, and that it's possible on the 29th of March, as scheduled, that we crash out with no deal. That is not to be excluded.
Nile Gardiner, what are the chances of a no deal here? Because certainly this week compared to last week, it seems like a more likely outcome, doesn't it?
Well, I agree. I do think the chances of a no deal have dramatically risen in the past 24 hours or so. I think there's a very, very strong chance Britain will exit the EU on March 29th under a no deal scenario, and my view is that actually this is probably the best scenario right now. I believe that Theresa May's deal does not offer the right proposals here. It keeps Britain indefinitely tied to the EU customs union. It's a hugely flawed agreement. There's no chance, I think, that deal would go through Parliament, even if a vote were to be held. And the reality is the British government has made in-depth preparations already for a no-deal scenario. Also, most European governments have been preparing for a no-deal scenario for many, many months. And so the sky is not going to fall in. I think Britain will do perfectly well under a no-deal Brexit. And I think that Britain will make a success of it.
You don't accept it'll be a big shock to the UK economy, just leaving the EU without a deal and all of a sudden just reverting back to WTO tariff structures? That would make UK goods more expensive to the 27, and the reverse would be true as well.
I think the British economy is doing perfectly well at the moment. It will continue to do well in the Brexit era. I think the markets have already worked into various scenarios the possibility of a no-deal Brexit. I don't think it's going to be a huge shock to the economic system. And I think that you're going to see foreign direct investment continuing to flow into the United Kingdom, and the UK successfully trading with all of the members of the European Union as well.
A lot of economists disagree with you. Peter Westmacott, do you disagree with Nile Gardiner on that?
Yeah, I disagree with that, because an awful lot of the foreign investment comes into the United Kingdom because we are the obvious port of entry to the single market. And all the just-in-time manufacturing, which relies on frictionless trade between the United Kingdom and the rest of the EU, and giving access to a market of 450 million prosperous consumers, all that will be placed in jeopardy, as many of the manufacturers who've got investments in the United Kingdom have been warning us. I would add one other thing, that I'm afraid I would love it if there was a great new shiny free trade agreement between the United Kingdom and the United States after Brexit, if we do leave the European Union, which is not actually certain anymore. But it's going to be much more difficult than that. We could have negotiated very well as part of the European Union because we've got the clout and the leverage to do so. But all that stuff about agriculture, financial services regulation, beef hormones, GMO foods, it is going to be a very, very difficult trade negotiation. It won't happen in 3 days. It'll take many years. And I'm afraid, I believe that the United Kingdom's negotiating position will be significantly weaker in taking on the United States, our major trading partner, than it would have been if we were still in the EU. Well,
two very different points of view. Nile Gardiner in Washington, thanks so much for joining us. Peter Westmacott as well. It was a pleasure. Thank you. More to come. We'll be right back.